Shalom, shalom, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Pulse of Israel here in our ancestral and eternal homeland, our holy city of Jerusalem in the land of Israel. Today, we're going to be talking about some of the latest headlines, whether they've been given headline attention or not given the headline attention they deserve, but showing how they have been manipulated or not reported correctly and how we are all being manipulated. This is really, really important because I hate the fact that we're all being divided by left and right. And really the media plays a huge, huge part in creating the impression that we're all being divided. So going into the next Pulse of Israel, stick with us. Let's get into it. Okay, everybody, here we go. And again, if you enjoy the work we do, the issues we tackle in standing up for Israel, the Jewish people, and the whole freedom-loving world, issues dealing with across the oceans, also with America, the elections, and Europe, whenever any of these issues come up and we deal with them at the Pulse of Israel, you can help us by, one, sharing the video and donating to help us with our video production and making sure our videos get seen. All you have to do is just go to pulseofisrael.com. So let's get into it, folks. Here in Israel, we've got a number of different issues that are really important to tackle and let you get the full understanding of what's going on. So since the COVID-19 virus is like the major issue that we're dealing with since March, and we continuously deal with it even now that the vaccines are starting to be rolled out, I want to bring up one aspect of how we have been manipulated, at least here in Israel, focusing specifically. I want to give you a headline news that is actually from back in November, all right? This is one of Israel's politicians, Yair Lapid. He was saying Netanyahu claims that Pfizer vaccine is on its way, and it's an insane lie. All right, let's continue reading it. Opposition leader Yair Lapid lambasts Netanyahu for his claim on Facebook that the coronavirus vaccine is on its way to Israel. Okay, this is something he said back in November, and this goes together with all of the reporting by Israel's mainstream media that Netanyahu was failing the Israeli people in his dealing with the coronavirus, COVID-19, and the whole situation, right? The media, day after day, blasting Netanyahu. Again, you could support Netanyahu, you could support his government, you could be against Netanyahu, be against his government, but the headline news was always blasting specifically Netanyahu. And again, continuing what this Israeli politician of the left was saying back in November. The Prime Minister's Facebook post includes a video about his talks with Pfizer on the potential purchase of its as yet unapproved vaccine. Again, this is back in November, just a little over a month ago. In it, he says he believes a deal will be made, right? Netanyahu was saying back then in November, a deal would be made for Israel to purchase this Pfizer vaccine. In the text attached to the video, however, he writes that the vaccine is on its way. And then Lapid says, it's an insane claim. There's no coronavirus vaccine yet. It's not on its way to Israel, and it's not even clear who this lie serves. Israel needs a functioning government, not a purveyor of tales. Okay, so again, I'm just giving you this one headline out of many headlines where the Israeli media was using the coronavirus, using the COVID-19 against Netanyahu to say how much he is a failed leader and must be gotten rid of. And again, I'm specifically bringing up this point about the vaccine because Netanyahu back in November, what's the exact date? Well, 2 months ago. I don't have the exact date. All right, so around 2 months ago, the beginning of November, when Netanyahu was promising, yes, I spoke to the head of Pfizer. Israel will be purchasing Pfizer vaccines. We're going to be getting it very soon. The media was blasting Netanyahu for being a liar, that not only would we not be getting it soon, Israel would be getting it in a very, very long time, probably one of the last countries in the world to get it. Fast forward to today. Okay, today, I don't know anyone all of you have been following the news about Israel. Israel is one of the first countries to have received the Pfizer vaccine, and only over the past few days, in less than a week, I think the number is like 250,000 Israelis have already been vaccinated or are on their way to being vaccinated. Unbelievable numbers. I'm not going into the conversation about the vaccine, good, bad, everyone should vaccinate, not everyone should vaccinate, who should be vaccinated. I'm not going into that right now. I'm just focusing on the media's dealing with the issues. And here, where 2 months ago, the Israeli media was lambasting Netanyahu for saying he is a liar that Israel would get the vaccine, today, Israel has the vaccine. Tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, have already started being vaccinated, and Israel will every day is trying to vaccinate as many as possible so that the Israeli population is vaccinated. So how does the Israeli media deal with it today? Well, believe it or not, the headline news in Israel today is saying that Israel overpaid for the vaccine. They are now blasting Netanyahu for wasting the Israeli taxpayers' money for overpaying. They were giving over the statistics of how European Union is paying like $14.50 a vaccine. America is paying like $19.50 for the vaccine. And Israel paid $30 for the vaccine, showing how horrible Netanyahu is today because Israel is overpaying for the vaccine. Okay, that is now the media narrative in attacking Netanyahu. Whereas just 2 months ago, they were calling him a liar that Israel was going to even be getting the vaccine or being one of the first countries to get it. He proved to be telling the truth. Israel is one of the first countries to be getting the vaccine, one of the first countries to be vaccinating its population at an incredible speed. So how does the media attack him now? The media is attacking him by saying how horrible he is because he had Israel overpay. Now, again, my point is our media is doing all of us a disservice. They are not providing facts for us. They are not providing true investigative journalism to help our societies, to help us be better informed, to be better citizens. No, the media is being used against us to create narratives of who they hate, who they support, and then put it all on us to then divide us. Because whether you're a supporter of this one or of this politician or that politician, this issue or that issue, you're either on the side of good or the side of bad. And the media is the one that is pushing these narratives, and politicians, unfortunately, are part of it. So last night, there are very, very few journalists who are truly journalists today, that they stick to the facts. They stick to reporting for the purpose of the population understanding information and not with an agenda. And in Israel, one of our journalists, mainstream journalists who does this is Amit Segal. That's his name. So he was actually on a television program talking about this issue. And he said when the media, his own program, right, his own news program, was attacking Netanyahu for how horrible Netanyahu is for overpaying for the Pfizer vaccine, Amit Segal publicly on this mainstream news program said Netanyahu's decision to pay extra for the vaccine deserves the Israeli prize. Okay, and he went on explaining how he doesn't care if Israel paid $10 extra more than other countries. The fact that Netanyahu was willing to pay more money for Israel to get this vaccine as quickly as possible, to help the Israeli economy go back into, try to return to normal as quickly as possible, one, is unbelievable for the Israeli economy, will help save so much more money, and Netanyahu deserves a prize for having made the strategic decision to even pay more money so that Israel would be one of the first countries to get it. Now, again, I'm not going into the issue about the vaccine. I'm going into the issue that the media is being used to misreport information from an agenda. Now, again, that could be an issue. That could be an issue that Israel paid more money than other countries. Does that automatically make Netanyahu a bad guy, like the Israeli media was trying to make it? Not necessarily, but that's the line it took. Just like 2 months ago, up until this point, the media has been lambasting Netanyahu as making him responsible for the horrible situation of how Israel has dealt with the coronavirus. Now, again, one could agree or disagree with any decisions that Prime Minister Netanyahu has made, but hello, there's a whole government. There's coalition politics involved. Just today, a decision was overturned. The government made a decision that for this third closure we're about to start, that school children would not be going to school. All of a sudden, now we're being told because of pressures. And again, I don't know what's right or wrong. Honestly, I don't know. But now that decision has been overturned. Now we're going to have a closure, but all children will be going to school. What's right or wrong? I don't know. But whether you agree or disagree, Netanyahu is not the address for your complaints, regardless of which side. Yes, he is the prime minister, but there is a government that makes decisions. There are committees that makes decisions, sometimes not according to what the prime minister wants. Doesn't make a difference. But if you follow the media, most, if not all of the reporting is always putting the blame specifically on Netanyahu. And again, that's causing the division, making people think that he is responsible for everything. He is what's evil in our country. And again, everything I'm talking about right now is specifically Israel, but you could for sure you could take everything I'm saying and instead of Netanyahu, use Trump. And instead of these corona issues about being in Israel, you could be supplanting the fact that dealing with America. Because again, you go to the American media and everyone who hates Trump is blaming him for this situation in America. Again, some issues he might be responsible, some issues he might not be responsible for. But the little I know about the American situation dealing with the coronavirus is that each state's governor is responsible for each state and how it's dealing with it and what things are open and what things are closed and the coronavirus and the COVID-19 restrictions, etc. So you can't ignore the responsibility of governors and just throw all your blame and hate on President Trump because of how the coronavirus situation has been dealt with. And again, I know plenty of people in New York. They hate Netanyahu. They hate Trump. They hate Trump and they blame him for everything. How can you blame Trump for everything going on in New York or in California for that instance when the governors are the ones responsible for making the decisions? So again, there has to be a nuanced way to look at these things. You can't just blame Netanyahu in Israel. You can't just blame Trump. And the media is always trying to divide us. It's not about providing us with facts. It's not about educating us. It's not about informing us. It's their agenda for all of us to hate Netanyahu in Israel and to hate Trump in America because they are the ones responsible for all of the ills. Do they hold responsibility? Yes, they are the leaders. They have responsibility, but there are plenty of other people responsible too. So you have to give over the nuanced picture, but yet we're not given that picture. All right, so that's issue number one I wanted to touch on. Let's go to issue number two regarding the latest Israeli headlines and how we're all being manipulated. Okay, issue number two. Last night there were protests in Jerusalem. There were two different protests, okay? There was a left-wing anti-Netanyahu protest where they were actually burning stuff in the streets outside of the prime minister's house. And then there was like right-wing religious protests also taking place in Jerusalem for different issues. It wasn't about politics. It was about other issues. Why am I bringing this up? Because at the right-wing religious protests, the police were using water cannons, okay? At the left-wing anti-Netanyahu protests, where they were burning stuff, there were no water cannons used by the police. Why is this important? Because the anti-Netanyahu leftist protests have been taking place for months, right? They took advantage of Corona, of COVID-19, of the lockdowns for their democratic rights to go out and protest. In the beginning, the police used these water cannons, but the left wing, because they had this, the support of the media, right? The media was live streaming their protests all the time, every week. Like, why do we need this live stream coverage of these protests? Okay, the first time, okay, maybe the second time, but it was every week. Why were the mainstream media stations live streaming and giving live updates of these protests? Why? Because unfortunately, the mainstream media has an anti-Netanyahu, anti-right-wing agenda, and they would do anything they can using their own coverage in order to try to create the public sentiment to get rid of Netanyahu. and get rid of his right-wing coalition, or even though this really wasn't a right-wing coalition, but to try to get rid of Netanyahu and his right-wing policies in government. Okay, so the media was live streaming this, live broadcasts every week, every Saturday night, etc. In the beginning, the police used water cannons. Guess what? There was then a public outcry from the left and the media that it's wrong for the police to be using water cannons at these left-wing protests. Guess what? The police buckled. Okay, and it was brought up in committees in the Israeli Knesset, and it would ended up being given an order to the police. I don't know exactly who gave the order, but the police ended up forbidding the use of water cannons at these left-wing protests. And here, let's fast forward. Last night, the exact time, we have the right-wing protest and the left-wing protest. The police only used the water cannons at one protest. Which protest? At the right-wing protest. Again, it shows how there is an agenda. There is a political agenda. And unfortunately, it starts with the media, but because the media has so much power, so the second the mainstream agenda-driven media channels and their news stations are always pumping the pro-left-wing, anti-right-wing, anti-Netanyahu approach here in Israel, the police buckled and they stopped using the water cannons for the left. But yet they continue using the water cannons against right-wing. Why? Because the media is not reporting about that. They're not complaining, oh, well, you're not supposed to use water cannons at all, so you shouldn't be using it at the right-wing protests. No, the media is not talking about it. They only complained about it when the police used it against the left-wing protests. So once again, we see the responsibility of the media and the power the media has to then have the establishment authorities like the police enforce unequal treatment to different populations. It's not. I mean, I don't want to complain about it not fair. It is wrong. It is so wrong. And again, we see how it's the media then abusing its power to force authorities to then be unequal in its treatment of the population. And unfortunately, it's almost always pro-left-wing agenda and anti-right-wing religious agenda here in Israel. And again, you could take everything I'm saying and replace it with left-right, conservative, liberal, and transplant it for all the issues in America as well. All right, so that's topic number 2 lately of headlines. And again, headline news, I'm telling you this. The media is not dealing with this. The media reported about the left-wing protests. You don't see any water cannons. The media reported about the right-wing protests. You do see water cannons, but they're not talking about the fact of the utter hypocrisy that even though the police made the decision because of the media's pressure not to use water cannons anymore at the left wing, but they're still using it at the right wing. No, the media is not dealing with that. You're hearing that from me and other citizens who are talking about it. All right, let's go to the third issue from headline news. And this is an issue that should be headline news, and the media establishment is ignoring it. And I'm now talking about Benny Gantz, the alternate prime minister that the media propped up to be the replacement for Benjamin Netanyahu, right? For the past, we had 3 elections, just a little less than a year and a half ago, between 2 years ago, year and a half ago, 3 different elections, and the media propped up and was pushing Benny Gantz, the center-left party, totally behind him in order to beat, that was their best chance of beating Netanyahu, right? Now, before one of those election cycles, a news report came out that the Iranians hacked Benny Gantz's phone. Again, this is someone who today is Israel's alternate prime minister, and he's supposed to be prime minister when the agreement with Benjamin Netanyahu allows it to. I think next November he's supposed to be prime minister. He probably never will be prime minister, but he is supposed to. So again, before one of the election cycles a year and a half ago, the news came out that the Iranians hacked his phone, and therefore he was in a compromised situation because they got personal information from his phone, and they can basically blackmail someone who could be prime minister of Israel. So this did come out in the news before that election cycle, but then the whole media establishment covered up for him. The lie that was pushed was that, no, this is a political hack. It's a lie. It didn't come from the Iranians. It was Benjamin Netanyahu and the Likud. It's a political ploy. It's not news at all. And you had many politicians and you had the whole media establishment basically saying it did not happen. It's not the Iranians. Iranian did not hack his phone. He is not compromised. He can't be blackmailed by the Iranians. It's all a ploy. It's all a political ploy, and it's Netanyahu and Likud who are to blame. Fast forward a year and a half. Last night, believe it or not, or over the weekend, there was a television program, one of the top television programs on Israel's top channels, channel number 12, I think number 12, in a program called Facts Uvda. Again, not a sympathetic right-wing program, but it's an investigative journalism program. Lo and behold, what do they report? Yes, it is true. Benny Gantz's phone was hacked by the Iranians, and he was compromised, and he is able to be blackmailed by the Iranians. So they basically reported and showed the information. I didn't watch the program itself personally. That is true. Now, that should be headline news. This guy is still alternate prime minister. He could still become prime minister. He's still planning on running in the upcoming 4th elections in March. That every single media station in Israel should be talking about. This should be headline news, right? No, totally being ignored. Totally being ignored. Even though it was broadcast finally as truth in this television program on Israeli television the other night, the whole media establishment is ignoring this. You're talking about someone that the whole left center of Israel with the whole media was pushing to be prime minister as a ploy to get rid of Netanyahu. He had the only chance. The only chance. His party was the closest party. They put 3 or 4 different parties together that he would be at the head, because only that way could they potentially get rid of Netanyahu. They knew this information before this election a year and a half ago. They hid this information because they didn't want to ruin their chances of getting rid of Netanyahu. That was their best hope. Do you hear? Did you hear the corruption involved? A potential, the media establishment or a number of journalists knew the truth before one of the elections a year and a half, 2 years ago, and the whole media establishment hid this information. We could potentially have had a prime minister that was compromised by the Iranians, blackmailable by he might be blackmailable right now. He's defense minister. He's been defense minister for the past half a year. And the journalists and the media establishment have covered up this information, and still now that even one of their programs has proven that it's true, the whole media establishment is hiding this information from the Israeli public. Again, we are being manipulated, right? This was all part of their agenda, their political agenda to get rid of Netanyahu and the right wing from ruling Israel. If they and again, instead, the country still loves Benny Gantz, or they're at least sympathetic to him, even if they don't think he's going to replace Netanyahu. But they don't hate him like they hate Bibi. Why do they hate Bibi? Why do they hate Bibi Netanyahu? Because the media has put across this agenda for decades of how horrible a person it is, how horrible a leader he is, and lying about him, and taking things out of context about him, so that the Israeli public hates him. But yet this Benny Gantz, people love and wanted him to be prime minister. You think they would have wanted him to be prime minister if they knew it was true that the Iranians had information on him and they were able to blackmail him? He's a nice guy, and the Iranians took advantage of him, but he should have come out and admitted, yeah, I was hacked. Yeah, I'm compromised. Okay, I've taken care of this situation, and they can't blackmail me. No, he never stood up to that. He basically, whether he didn't admit it or no one in his circles admitted it, they just swept it under the rug. Again, the media is using an agenda to divide all of us, to hate certain people, to hate a certain camp, to be sympathetic to other positions, to be sympathetic to another ideology, the leaders of that camp, all in order to divide us. We're not a divided people, yet it's the media that manipulates us with their reporting about issues to fit their agenda. It's very, very scary. Let's go on to the next one. A few weeks ago, and this is touches upon the media, but it goes much deeper. It goes into the authorities. Okay. And again, everything I say here, I'm talking about Israel, but you could also transplant it to issues back in America in terms of contemporary current events. A few weeks ago, a man in the Israeli city of Arad, I think he's in his 60s, if not in his 70s, in the middle of the night, he heard noise outside of his house. He went outside and with a gun, and lo and behold, what did he find? A group of thieves were trying to steal his car. What did he do? He shot at the ground to stop them, and the bullet, or whatever it is, the bullet ricocheted and then hit one of the thieves, and the thief was killed. Okay? So you would think, great, this is a guy standing up for himself, standing up for his property. If he wouldn't have done anything, they would have gotten away with his car. Who knows if they would have done something to him because he caught them in the middle of the act, and they wouldn't want to be identified. They wouldn't want to be caught. Who knows what they would have done to him. Great, this guy deserves a medal. Nope. This guy is now being put on trial for murder, for murdering the thief. This is how the progressive agenda of our societies in Western society today, and again, this is both in America and Israel and the Western world, has overtaken. It comes across in the media, and it's overtaken the way our authorities, the police, and the justice system act. Why are people not allowed to defend themselves? This guy did not try to kill the guy. He did not try. He didn't point the gun at the thief. I mean, whether that would be an issue or not, I don't know. Doesn't make a difference. I'm dealing with the facts of this issue right now. The issue is he did not even aim the gun at the thief. He just shot it as a warning shot, and it ricocheted and hit the thief. And instead of allowing this guy to have self-defense, he is being put on trial. Because we're not, and it's basically a public atmosphere by the media, by the police, by the justice system that is taking away our rights to defend ourselves. This is a group of Arabs, of Bedouin Arabs, and unfortunately they are known for a lot of crime, for a lot of protection, mafia type crime, of blackmailing stores and businesses to give protection money in order to have their businesses saved and safe. And if any business does not give protection money, well, guess what happens to their business? It's destroyed. This is a known criminal culture, unfortunately, in some Bedouin communities in Israel, in the north, in the Galil, in the south, in the Negev. The police have their hands tied. They can't deal with it. And here we see that even citizens who try to defend themselves are not able to, because anytime a citizen tries to defend himself, his own home, well, the authorities put him on trial. Okay, and this guy's son made a post on Facebook where he brought another article of someone else who he heard thieves outside of his house, and he was walking outside by happenstance when the thieves were there, and he did not have a gun. But what did the thieves do to him? They stabbed him and killed him. And the son's point was, you don't know what they might have done to my father. My father's potentially saved his life, as well as stopping thieves from stealing his car. He does not deserve to be on trial. It's self-defense. And unfortunately, the authorities have been so infected by this progressive ideology that the rights of thieves and murderers and terrorists trump the rights of regular citizens to live and self-defense, right? Because we have plenty of terrorists who kill us, and our authorities, our justice system, our Supreme Court stops us from giving out punishments. Their home is supposed to be destroyed, and then the justice system, the Supreme Court, forbids the government, forbids the army from even meting out this punishment of destroying their house. They go off scot-free without that punishment, and then they receive money from the Palestinian Authority. Okay, I'm just giving you more and more cases where, unfortunately, this progressivism has so infiltrated the justice system, and the authorities, that it stops people like this man in Arad not only from being able to self-defense, but then we get punished for instances when we do have self-defense. And against everything I'm telling you right now I'm talking to you about headline news in Israel, but this, just supplant this with cases in America as well. Same thing, just change the names, change the countries, same progressivism that has overtaken some of the courts and the authorities in America as well. Next headline, okay? Next headline, and it's connected to the last one. There was an Israeli soldier a week ago, and there's a video of this. He was on guard duty on some road, and the terrorist comes out of his car, runs up to the soldier, takes out a Molotov cocktail, lights the Molotov cocktail, throws it at the IDF soldier, then runs back to his car and runs away. And the IDF soldier did not shoot. Okay? The IDF soldier should have shot. Now, yes, the IDF soldier was wrong. He should have shot. But I don't put the blame totally on the soldier. I put the blame, again, on the progressive ideology that has permeated the justice system, that has made the rules of engagement for soldiers so complicated and harsh that it makes them very confused in split seconds to make decisions about whether they're supposed to shoot or not. How do I know this? Because I am an IDF soldier. I hear those rules of engagement before I'm sent out for my duties and my activities and the actions I'm sent out, and I know exactly what that soldier heard, the guidelines he was given, and I tell you from firsthand experience, they are complicated and make no sense when a soldier has seconds to decide whether to shoot or not, and instead each and every one of our soldiers is given these complicated guidelines that if 1 second you shoot, let me tell you exactly the rules, okay? Exactly the rules for this case. A Molotov cocktail. The soldier is not allowed to shoot until he sees the Molotov cocktail being lit. Meaning, if the soldier would have shot before the Molotov cocktail was lit, he'd be court-martialed. Okay. Now he's only allowed to shoot after it's lit, after there's a real danger. Okay. If it wouldn't have been lit, it's not a danger, so he could have been court-martialed for that. After he threw the Molotov cocktail, he's no longer a danger according to the rules of engagement. He also would have been court-martialed if he had shot. So you're talking about a soldier having to decide, wait a second, someone's about to have an attack on me. Wait, when's the right second that I can shoot? If I shoot too soon, then I'll be court-martialed. If I shoot too late, I'll be court-martialed. When's the 2 seconds that I can shoot? That's the crazy situation that our soldiers are under because of how this progressivism has so overtaken our morality. My take, a soldier that's on guard duty, if he sees a threat, then obviously there should be guidelines, but if he thinks he should shoot, he shoots. If he ended up making a mistake, so yeah, court-martial the guy if he ends up making the mistake. Or not, sorry, don't court-martial the guy, but yeah, to give him some punishment to say, listen, I know you tried to make the best decision. It was the wrong decision. This was the right decision. He doesn't deserve to be court-martialed for making the wrong decision and trying to defend people's lives. But today, every soldier is out there afraid that he's not going to have the support of his higher-ups or the legal establishment if he does shoot. Now, obviously, if a soldier does something totally wrong, yeah, he gets court-martialed. But you're not talking about situations when a soldier's doing something totally wrong. You're talking about real terror situations, real terror attacks that these soldiers are confronted with, and they have seconds to decide how to react. And this progressivism that looks after the rights of the terrorists more than the rights of our own citizens to be protected and for our soldiers to do the right thing to protect. Therefore, our soldiers are the ones who get in trouble. And unfortunately, the soldier was thrown out of his unit. That was the punishment he was given for not acting. And unfortunately, a very prominent right-wing journalist posted, how ironic. For not shooting, he's kicked out of his unit. If he would have shot, he would have been court-martialed. That is the sickness that has permeated our media, that has permeated our justice system. And again, this isn't just Israel, this is also America. This is what we're up against. And again, it doesn't start with the media, but the media are partners with it, dividing our people into thinking, wait a second, yeah, he's wrong. He only had that 1 second to shoot and he didn't shoot. And then you have people angry at him because he didn't shoot. Yep, and people would have been angry at him if he had shot, as opposed to the whole country, or at least 99% of the country, if he would have shot, saying, yes, that guy's a hero. He shot when he was supposed to. But that's not happening, because unfortunately this progressivism of looking after the rights of terrorists instead of the rights of our own people to be protected and for our soldiers to protect, it's become totally legalized, and it makes these 18, 19, 20-year-old young soldiers afraid of what decision to make. They only have split seconds to make a decision, and instead they're afraid. So it's very, very sad. Two more issues. Another issue that shows about the manipulation and how we're not protected like we're supposed to be. The other night, in the Israeli city of Lod, it's a mixed city, Jews and Arabs. Well, the city made a decision to destroy an illegal house built by an Arab family. In response, what did some Arabs do in that city? They lit up whole blocks of cars on fire, totally destroying whole blocks of cars with fire. Now, first of all, innocent, and there were Jewish cars in a Jewish neighborhoods in the city. These cars are destroyed. What did these people do? Nothing. They didn't do anything, and all of a sudden their cars are destroyed. Second of all, it's a fire. A fire can spread. A fire can catch onto things. Miraculously, people's lives were not hurt. Buildings were not affected, were not burned down. People did not lose their homes. It's just the cars that were destroyed. How did we get to this situation where you have people who, because they're mad at the authorities, they decide to take out their anger and destroy property for other people? Where are the authorities? And again, this goes back to a different issue, how unfortunately, and I was talking to you earlier, how the authorities don't correctly deal with the crime in the Bedouin communities down south and up north. Again, this is an Arab population, and the authorities are afraid to deal with these populations. Why? Because it's racist. They're Arabs. And if the authorities go after specifically these Arab populations and the crime in these Arab populations, one, they're looked at as racist. The media would paint them as racists. So they don't go after them properly. And the justice system does not give them the backing to go after it properly, because they are a minority population. They're the Arabs. So the Jewish population, the government goes after. The authorities, and this is in Israel, the authorities go after if it's any Jew who does something wrong. But here you have whole blocks of cars put on fire, destroyed. Potentially houses could have been destroyed. Buildings could have been destroyed. People's lives could have been lost. And the authorities are slow in going after this and have done nothing that allowed the situation even to exist. And once again, this goes back to the media that is always trying to divide us. If you ask me, the media should be, and the media is not dealing with this, hardly talking about this. I want to give you a headline, actually, because the headline is actually, the headline says it all also. Because the police know that it was done by some of the Arabs in the city. So what's the headline in the Israeli news? The headline is, cars and trucks go up in flames on the streets of the city. Cars and trucks just go up in flames, right? This is like the terror attacks that take place in Europe by radical Muslims. The headline news in Europe, they don't call out the Muslim population or that it's the fact that it's Muslims who did those terrorist attacks. It's protests, fires in the streets of Paris. Same thing here. Cars go up in flames in the city of Lod. No, cars didn't go up in flames miraculously. Cars were put on fire by some angry Arabs who are citizens of the city of Lod. But again, media stays away. They want to be politically correct. And instead of helping all Israelis, Jews and Arabs, Arabs are affected by this. Arabs are affected by violence in their community and crime in their community. When the Bedouin have these protection rackets, well, they don't just do it to Jewish businesses. They also do it to other Arab Bedouin businesses. So the police and the authorities should be going after this crime in the Arab Bedouin community to help all Israeli citizens. But unfortunately, this Western progressivism that automatically sympathizes with the minority group and then stops the authorities and the justice system from correctly going after the criminals and the terrorists, it ends up affecting negatively all of us, Jews and Arabs. Doesn't make a difference. Jewish, Christian, Muslim, we're all affected by the crime of these crime groups in the minority communities. And we have to get rid of this political correctness that is peddled by the media in order to protect all Israelis. And again, everything I'm saying right now, transplant to America, same issues. All right. And finally, like I've been telling you, how there is there's not one set of laws. There's one set of laws for the leftists and those who believe in the leftist agenda, and then one set of laws for the rightists or the religious if you believe in another political agenda. And earlier I was telling you how the police used water cannons only against the right-wing protesters, but not against the left-wing protesters, because that would have made headline news and the police would have gotten smashed by the media, right, if they would have used the left-wing protesters. Well, just last week, a teenager, an Israeli teenager, that's called one of a group called the Hilltop Youth, that has been demonized by the Israeli press over the years, because there have been some. You're talking about teenagers that have left schools and they go out to the hilltops of Judea and Samaria to build the hilltops. Some of them are problematic in terms of what they believe to stand up against the Arabs, to stop the Arabs from doing damage, stop the Arabs from stealing stuff and from destroying fields in Judea and Samaria. So they're basically anti-establishment, saying the police aren't taking care of us, the army isn't taking care of us like it should, so we'll do what we can to stand up for our rights on our hills of Judea and Samaria. Some of them are problematic. Not all of them. They have been stigmatized by the media and stigmatized by the police. And there was a police chase last week with a car of these Hilltop Youth, still under investigation. But according to the headline, according to the news that has come out, that I have seen, a police car rammed into them on purpose. Their car turned over, and one of the teenagers was later found pinned under the car, and he died from being pinned under the car. And unfortunately, the police are involved. There was a police car that rammed into that car, and here we're talking about days later, and the police are still mum about what happened, are still not following guidelines about how to correctly interrogate the police officers who were involved in that incident. Again, I'm not telling you exactly what happened or what didn't happen. A lot of open question marks about what happened. A lot of potentially questionable actions by the police officers involved in the death of that boy. Heads should be rolling. Heads are not rolling. And again, you see, if that would have been a left-wing protester, heads would be rolling. It would be headline news. So again, the point of this, and unfortunately, I wish I could focus on the good news, because there's plenty of good news and plenty of good stuff happening here in Israel and in America. But I try to be a voice also, not just to inspire you with the truth about Israel and the Jewish people and about good news, but calling out the hypocrisy of the media and calling out the danger and the damage that the media is doing following this progressive left agenda. They are agenda driven. They push their headlines, they push their stories, not according to how to inform the public or how the public could be a better people or how our countries could be a better country by informing them with information. No, it's about dividing us. It's about packaging their headlines, about choosing their stories and packaging it in such a way that they create a hatred towards one camp and make one camp the evil side, and we are all being manipulated. All of us. I don't have a problem with my fellow friend or family member or neighbor who believes in left-wing views or in views I disagree with. I'm okay with that. We could all agree or disagree, and we should be able to agree or disagree respectfully, have conversations, be able to share bread at the same table, and move on. That's the way the world used to be, at least until a few years ago. But the media has taken this to such an extent with their reporting and dividing us No, I don't believe America is a divided country. I don't believe Israel is a divided country. Most people want to live peacefully. Even if we disagree, we want to live peacefully. We want to go shopping at the same stores together. We want to eat bread at the same table together. We're not all divided. There is militant groups, or at least militant in their ideologies, but we're not divided societies. It's the media that creates and makes our societies more and more divided than they should. My call is for the media to go back and to be objective in its reporting and informing about the public, and to stop its ideological agenda that they, the media and the journalists with their agenda, are dividing our societies, causing more damage to all of us. That's the latest for today. So each one of these issues deserves its own video, but so much is going on. I just wanted to give you a real live update of some of the latest. I might make specific videos going to more deep dive of these specific issues. Again, if you support and like the videos that I put out, that we at the Pulse of Israel put out, well, one, share our videos, and two, you can go to pulseofisrael.com and just give whatever donation you can to help support us for being a voice of truth and standing up for the freedom-loving world. Again, I'm not for conservatives. I'm not against. It's not that I'm for conservatives and against leftists. I'm not for rightists against leftists. I'm for all of us. I want a better society where we can all agree to disagree and live respectfully for one another. I just want to call out the truth that the media is hiding from us, both regards Israel and regards the rest of the freedom-loving world. It's all up to us. So if you support our voice, please support us in any way. And again, by sharing our videos, sign up for our newsletter at pulseofisrael.com. And yes, if you're able to give a donation to support us being able to do more videos and getting our videos seen, you can make a donation on www.thepulseofisrael.com. So signing off from the eternal and undivided capital of the Jewish people, Jerusalem, here in our ancestral and eternal homeland, Israel. Thanks for watching, everyone. Shalom.
Pulse of Israel, frontline videos from the Holy Land. Support our work by donating today.